Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free. And it's 100% ridiculously easy to use. We find it really convenient for Night Moves Radio and our Cloverleaf Radio network. We record when it's best for us, and best of all, we can record on the go or at home. With this easy app, it makes doing our show so much fun and very easy. Anyone wanting to start a podcast? I suggest using Anchor. Perhaps it'd be a great starting point for you. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. So, if you would like to start your podcast today and start creating, how about you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started. Start your podcast today.
Welcome to the Spoken Word Poetry Podcast. Listen in as poet and artist Ariana R. Cherry features words written from her heart and performed from her soul. Every week, you will hear original poetry spoken through performance art and storytelling. Listen weekly on Anchor, Spotify, Apple iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Truth, stories, and poetry. Exactly what the soul needs.
Hello, welcome to Spoken Word Poetry Podcast. Tonight we have Meg Smith, who is a poet. She actually found our website, Poetry Essentials Hub, and we shared some of her poetry on our blog. And if you haven't been there yet already, it's a new website that I just put up. I don't know if it's been up a few weeks now. You can go to it at poetryessentialshub.com. There is a blog, there's poetry videos. We're in the midst of trying to create a gift store. There's books, and I hope to add a lot more. And I hope to find a lot more poets to interview, like Meg herself. And tonight we've got Meg Smith on our show. And hello, Meg.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I live in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I am the author of 5 poetry books, the 4 most recent of which have been published by Emu Books in Fitzwilliam, New Hampshire. I am a journalist by profession, and also I am a dancer as well, and I produce events. I produced a lot of dance and literary events in the area. I served for quite a few years on the board of Lowell Celebrates Kerouac. That's a festival we have here in Lowell in honor of Jack Kerouac, who was born and raised here. And writing is, I would say, one of my lifelong passions. I love to write poetry, certainly, and I love to tell stories in writing. And for me, it's just part of a great adventure. And I feel grateful, too, that I've been able to channel my writing into my profession of journalism, and that thereby telling people stories and chronicling the events of the community and the world. And I'm thrilled to be able to share some of that here in this podcast.
That's awesome. I was looking through actually some of your travelers' photos on your megsmithwriter.com website, and I just wanted to make the comment that my boyfriend would be incredibly jealous because in September of 2018, it said you visited Dublin and you stopped by a home once occupied by Bram Stoker, author of Dracula.
Right. Yep.
And he loves all that. So I haven't told him yet, but I was going to be like, hey, I talked to someone who's been in Bram Stoker's house. So. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was a really neat moment. I took myself on a little walking tour of Dublin, and I just kind of found some landmarks that I knew I wanted to go and see. My mother is from Ireland.
Oh, neat.
So I'm a first-generation Irish American. And, of course, growing up, it was really cool knowing that Bram Stoker was this famous Irish author who was the author of Dracula. So I made a point of going to find his house and have my picture taken. So, as to prove the moment.
Yes, and I love that. I think it's some sort of a door knocker. I don't know if it's
really gothic looking door knocker.
Yeah, I was going to show him that picture and everything but I was going to tell him after the interview. So, but yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, she said he'd be so jealous right now. So yeah. And you also said you're a journalist, and funny thing, I actually write for our local newspaper here in town, and then I've been writing for another newspaper in another town that's about 15 minutes away, and I think I've been writing for them, about 8 years.
That's great. Yeah, local journalism. That's what I do too. That's where it's at, I feel. That's great.
Yeah, I really hope that newspapers stick around. I know some of them are digital and paper, but I don't know, with you being a journalist, if you ever worry about, the newspaper itself just, going away. So, I don't know.
Well, I've been a journalist by profession now for, actually, this year is my 30th year, my 30th anniversary. And I certainly, obviously, because I've been doing this for so long, I feel very passionately that journalism is important. It's important as a profession, but I also really feel that it's just important in terms of our democracy. We need to have outlets of information that are objective and tell all sides of a story.
Oh, yes.
And listen to people who have different points of view, maybe even conflicting points of view, and to be able to share those experiences through good writing, through good photography. It's true, as you say, there are definitely challenges in the digital age. Another way that I look at it, too, is that we now have tools for telling those stories that are relatively new. For example, just being able to go and shoot a live video of an event that's happening. For example, and I'm sure this will be familiar to you, too, I covered several rallies and vigils in memory of George Floyd.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of, events promoting civil rights and calling for an end to racial injustice. And so that's just one example of events that I covered. And you're now really in the moment, and you're able to take photos. You're able to shoot live videos that you can post right away. You're able to shoot videos that can be embedded into a story later as a kind of archiving.
Yeah.
So I think another way to look at it is having more tools to tell about important events that affect all of us. And what my hope is, and my prayer and my message to readers, to consumers, is that in order to continue doing that work, we do need to have their support. We do to have their understanding of the important work that we're trying to do, and that they're in fact part of that work. Because to me, journalism is like a dialogue. It's a two-way street, really.
That is very true. And with everything being almost on the internet, I mean, you could get news out so much faster than they could back in the old days. I mean, that's what's great about it. So,
that's definitely true. And it also increases the challenge because no matter what you do in journalism, you absolutely have to make sure that you get it right.
Oh yeah.
Or you get it accurately.
You'll hear that term fake news.
Yeah. And even in the day of instantaneous information. I always feel like, well, it's also the age of instantaneous misinformation if something is not conveyed correctly. And so I always kind of advocate that it's worth taking a split second to take a step back, and make sure that what you're putting out there is really true to yourself and true to, the events that you're trying to share.
Well, you probably cover more large areas. I'm more of a small rural writer. We've got, the features, occasionally I do those. And then, we've got, school board and village board, but I always double check if I have a question, because I don't want to print something wrong, local information, because a lot of people depend on their small newspaper for their information.
Oh yeah, that's where it's at. And I've done a lot of, that very same kind of local journalism for a long time. And much like you, I have covered city councils and school committees, and, here in Massachusetts, of course, we have boards of selectmen, or select boards, some of them are called these days. And we also have a thing called town meeting in many of our communities. And so, to your point, especially in local journalism, your community is really depending on you to tell them what's going on, and telling them, in a fair and accurate way.
Sure. Well, I don't want to take up all your time with journalism, but it was just interesting because I was like, oh, she's a journalist and I write for newspapers. So we kind of had that in common. And then my boyfriend liked Graham Stoker's. I was like, I had to make the connection. So, but, you talk about being a journalist. So I'm just wondering, were you a poet first or a journalist first, or how did your interest in poetry come along?
Oh, that's a really awesome question. To be honest with you, I think I kind of came up doing both at the same time, because I remember from the time I was a little kid, I remember always like writing short stories and writing poetry and drawing, and but also that I really liked reading newspapers, and I even liked kind of inventing my own newspapers and magazines and things like that.
Oh, cool.
In fact, then I did, when I got to be a little more of a grown-up, I published my own zine for 4 years. So I kind of feel like they came up simultaneously in a way, and that I became a lifelong learner, in them, in both of them.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're in the middle of trying to, I think you saw it, start our first magazine. We've been publishing books for a couple of years, but I've been publishing books myself for since 2004. But yeah, the magazine will be a new thing, but I don't feel like it'll be that new to me, since I already write for papers and I know the format, and I actually work at a church and I do newsletters. So putting it together will be nothing. So.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I look forward to that. That sounds great.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. And also I see you do live in Massachusetts now, and you've been there for a while, but you were also originally from Boston. So how did you come from, you started at Boston and then end up in Lowell, Massachusetts?
Sure. Well, my dad was born and raised in Charlestown, which was, and to some degree still is, an Irish and Catholic neighborhood in Boston. It's on the harbor. So he grew up surrounded by ships and the USS Constitution, which is the oldest commissioned ship in the Navy. And so we definitely had kind of a lot of, you could say, mariners' tales influencing our upbringing. Okay. And my mother immigrated from Ireland to the Boston area because there was a call for nurses, and she had gone to nursing school in Dublin. So she and her friends decided to come over and seek their fortune in the United States. And they met and married. And after a few years, decided to move out to Lowell, which is about a half an hour north of Boston. And we were living in a town called Billerica, which is right outside of Lowell. And over the years, I got familiar with the city of Lowell, and I decided that I really liked it. And so I went to school at the University of Massachusetts at Lowell. And eventually I met my husband, my late husband, through different poetry readings and poetry gatherings, and through the Lowell Celebrates Kerouac Festival. So we decided to make our home here, and we bought a beautiful home here. And I still feel very, very connected to my Boston roots, and certainly my Boston Irish roots. I also am very much in love with my adopted city
Great.
of Lowell. And the cool thing is, it's like that they're